Coming up on Arirang News. Weeks ahead of President Yoon's visit to the U.S., South Korea responds to the recently leaked Pentagon documents that suggest alleged spying on Seoul's security control tower. The presidential office says after both countries examine the situation, it'll call for adequate action from the United States if necessary. Since last Friday, North Korea has not been answering regularly held daily inter-Korean phone calls. Seoul's Unification Ministry believes it's Pyongyang that unilaterally cut off the liaison communication line following South Korea-U.S. joint military exercises. A U.S. warship sails through the disputed South China Sea. This amid China's continuing encirclement of Taiwan with military drills following the island's President Tsai Ing-wen's trip to the U.S. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in South Korea. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We start with the country's response to the leakage of classified U.S. military documents over the weekend. Just a few weeks ahead of President Yoon Suk-yeol's visit to the U.S., it's causing ramifications here as it suggests alleged spying on Seoul's security control tower. This also raises concerns over South Korea's presidential office being exposed to wiretapping. To this, the office says it'll request Washington takes adequate action after an assessment if necessary. Our Kim Do-yeon leads our coverage tonight.
The South Korean presidential office plans to request appropriate action from the U.S. regarding the classified military documents allegedly leaked online after both Seoul and Washington finished their assessment of the situation. An official at the top office said on Monday that confirming facts will be the first priority. The official explained that this is because media reports are not confirmed as true yet, and even the U.S. government is still investigating. In addition, as the documents are mostly related to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, it is possible that a certain group leaked the documents with a specific purpose. Also, the documents could have been fabricated. Among the material leaked was a conversation between President Yoon Suk-yeol's then Secretary for Foreign Affairs and his National Security Advisor. According to the New York Times, the government was, quote, mired in concerns that the U.S. would not be the end user if South Korea were to comply with the U.S. request for ammunition. While not confirmed, the reports do come just a couple weeks before President Yoon's state visit to the U.S. As concerns grow, the official told reporters throughout this process of assessment and requesting for response by the U.S., everything will be based on the trust that the two allies share, and that anyone trying to break that by using this situation politically will be met with the public's dissent. Meanwhile, in a statement on Sunday U.S. time, the Pentagon said it was checking whether the photographed documents that appeared to contain sensitive and highly classified material are authentic. The Pentagon has referred the issue to the Department of Justice, and the DOJ has opened a criminal investigation, while the White House has remained quiet and diverted questions on the issue to the Pentagon. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
For the fourth straight day, North Korea has not been answering regularly held daily inter-Korean phone calls. The South Korean government believes it's a one-sided cutoff from its counterpart across the border. Choi Min-jung tells us why.
North Korea has on Monday remained unresponsive to routine calls with South Korea for the fourth day in a row. Accordingly, Seoul believes Pyongyang has unilaterally cut all communication.
During the weekend, the North did not respond via the military communication line, and this morning there was no response from the liaison office and the military communication line. For now, we are putting more weight on the possibility of a unilateral blockade by the North.
The Unification Ministry on Monday added it will review how to respond while monitoring the situation closely. The inter-Korean liaison communication channel and a military hotline are normally used twice a day, but there has been no response via either since Friday. It is unclear why the North remains unresponsive, But an expert says Pyongyang's move appears to be in protest of the ongoing security cooperation between Seoul and Washington.
So it's another way of North Korea issuing stern warning to United States and South Korea that it does not appreciate the augmented security cooperation between the two countries, especially the ongoing and elevated security cooperation and military exercises.
The expert did point out, however, that this measure should not be regarded as the North's determination to carry out a substantial measure of retaliation or provocation, as it may only be a warning. The ministry adds this is the first time that calls have stopped for longer than a day since communications were restored in October 2021. Prior to that period, North Korea had cut off cross-border communication for about 2 months in protest of the Seoul-Washington joint military drills. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
South Korea, the U.S. and Japan are set to hold trilateral senior-level defense talks in the United States later this week. According to a military-informed source on Monday, the Deputy Minister-level Defense Trilateral Talks, or DTT, will take place on Friday for the first time in 3 years. The three countries are expected to discuss ways to share North Korea's missile warning data in real time to respond to Pyongyang's nuclear and missile threats. Currently, missile information is not shared immediately between Seoul and Tokyo. Meanwhile, ahead of the DTT session, Seoul and Washington are scheduled to hold their regular defense talks for 2 days starting Tuesday. Since the high-profile meeting between the U.S. and Taiwan, there's increasing Chinese military presence around Taiwan, having practiced ship-launched strikes involving an aircraft carrier. The U.S. responded by sailing a warship in the South China Sea. Peunji has more.
Footage released by China's military on Monday shows a fighter jet taking off from an aircraft carrier as the country carries out its third day of military exercises around Taiwan. China's state media said Monday that fighter jets carrying live ammunition conducted simulated strikes near Taiwan, and that its Shandong aircraft carrier was involved in the exercise. Taiwan's defense ministry also said it spotted 11 Chinese warships and 59 aircraft around the island as of 10 a.m. on Monday. China has been conducting exercises around Taiwan since last Saturday in response to Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen's meeting with U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy in Washington last week. Announcing the three-day drill last week, the Chinese military had said the exercises serve as a, quote, stern warning to the self-ruled island's government. In response, the U.S. Navy's guided missile destroyer sailed near a man-made island, which is one of the Chinese-controlled islands in the South China Sea. The U.S. 7th Fleet announced Monday that its guided missile destroyer, USS Milius, carried out a freedom of navigation operation in the South China Sea to uphold the rights, freedoms, and lawful uses of the sea. It said the operations were carried out within 12 nautical miles of Mischief Reef, once a reef submerged at high tide and where China has built an airstrip and other facilities. The 7th Fleet added that under international law, features that are submerged at high tide in their naturally formed state are not entitled to a territorial sea, and stressed that Monday's operations demonstrated that vessels can lawfully exercise high seas freedoms in these areas. Noting that unlawful and sweeping maritime claims in the South China Sea pose a serious threat to the freedom of the seas, it said their operations demonstrate the U.S. will fly, sail, and operate wherever international law allows. Peunji, Arirang News.
Back here at home, the remains of Korean independence activist Hwang Ki-hwan have finally returned to South Korea from the United States 100 years after his death. According to the Ministry of Patriots and Veterans Affairs on Monday, Hwang was buried at Mount Olivet Cemetery in New York in 1923, and his remains were discovered in 2008. Hwang went to Hawaii and served as an American soldier on the Western Front in Europe during World War I. After the war, he became a diplomat for the Korean Provisional Government. He worked tirelessly to raise awareness of Korea's reality during the Japanese colonial era and to protect the rights of Koreans living abroad. The story of his life was the basis for the Korean hit drama Mr. Sunshine, which was released in 2018. Cars recorded the biggest trade surplus compared to any other item in South Korea during the first 2 months of 2023, thanks to rising sales of eco-friendly vehicles. Data released by the Korea International Trade Association on Monday shows that the trade balance for cars came to almost $8 billion, ranking top for the biggest surplus for the first time in 9 years. The list was followed by petroleum products, synthetic resin, and ships and offshore structures. Meanwhile, chips, which had kept its top ranking for 6 consecutive years, dropped to 7th place. South Korea unveils a project worth billions of dollars today for key sectors that include chips and secondary batteries. This comes as part of the country's latest efforts to bridge the technological gap between rivals and maximize production. Our Moon Hae-ryun has the details.
South Korea's Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy held a roundtable on Monday with chief technology officers from 9 South Korean firms, including Samsung Display, Hyundai Motor and POSCO, to discuss investment plans for the year ahead. The government announced that it will be spending 70% of its annual budget for research and development across 40 different projects in 11 key investment areas. Those being semiconductors, displays, secondary batteries, future mobility, core materials, advanced manufacturing, robots, aerospace and defense, advanced bio, next-generation nuclear power, and new energy industries. The ministry explained that the public and private sectors will be working together to establish clear goals and investment directions for each sector and focus their investment on selected strategic projects. In the past, the government faced criticism for its unclear approach to investments in research and development, but through collaboration with the private sector, it hopes that it will be able to invest wisely. Furthermore, a project manager group will be formed to manage the process of technological development, commercialization, and talent development. With the slump in the semiconductor industry amid falling semiconductor prices and the economic slowdown affecting exports, the government plans to invest in 4 semiconductor projects to revitalize the industry. These include developing semiconductors for mobility, energy, and home appliances, as well as pursuing semiconductor technology development projects for autonomous vehicles. As of Monday, the government has identified 34 projects to invest in. This will later be expanded to 40 projects after further consultation with experts. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
South Korea's overall inflation appears to be cooling off, but consumers are still feeling price pressure on many items. With this, eyes are on what this could mean for the Bank of Korea's rate decision set for tomorrow. Lee Kyung-eun tells us more.
Inflation in South Korea remains stubborn, but appears to be slowing, coming at 4.2% in March, the smallest on-year jump in a year.
Consumer prices have been seemingly cooling down since the second half of last year and are likely to stabilize further throughout this year.
That's raising some anticipation of an interest rate freeze when the Bank of Korea makes its decision on Tuesday.
The US may slow down rate hikes as the labour market stabilises. That's easing pressure on the BOK in terms of the exchange rate, and perhaps means it will make its rate decision based on the domestic situation.
However, with the recent announcement by OPEC Plus to cut production, oil prices are seemingly rebounding, possibly affecting prices in general. And even with that, oil prices potentially surging, items are getting more expensive across the board. The price pressures, which initially began with fuel and food, have been seen in 86% of 458 items last month, most notably in the service sector, where restaurant prices jumped 7.4% in March, a significantly high number compared to the overall inflation of 4.2% in that month. With this, core inflation, which excludes the price changes in the volatile food and energy sectors, remained relatively heated at 4.8%. Against the backdrop of these mixed inflation figures, eyes are on the Bank of Korea's upcoming decision. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
tax revenue in South Korea is likely to fall short of expectations this year. This has triggered speculation that the government could gradually remove discounts on fuel tax. For more, here's our Shin-ayoung.
South Korea's tax revenue may fall short of its estimate this year. That's according to Finance Minister Chu Kyung-woo on Friday amid rising concern over tax revenue as South Korea recorded its greatest ever on-year decline earlier this year. The Ministry of Economy and Finance had already released data on the country's tax revenue for the first 2 months of 2023, which came to around 54 trillion Korean won or $41 billion, roughly $12 billion less than in the same period last year. Initially, the government forecast a total of roughly $300 billion for 2023. However, even if the government collects the same amount of tax as last year from March until the end of the year, the deficit will surpass $15 billion. And if the trend continues, tax revenue for 2023 will see an on-year decrease for the first time since 2019. And amid the growing concern, the government is reportedly reviewing a plan to gradually remove fuel tax discounts. With oil prices hitting record highs around the world last year, South Korea has been offering a temporary concession on fuel to ease the burden on drivers. From the first day of 2023, the tax cut on gasoline was reduced to 25% from 37%, while the rate for diesel has been set at 37% since last year. With that rate set to expire at the end of this month, the government must decide soon whether or not to extend the discounts. Among potential options is reducing the tax cut for diesel to the same level as gasoline or cutting the rate for both gasoline and diesel to the 15 to 20% range. Apart from fuel tax, adjusting the tax cut applied to car purchases has been also mentioned as a way to secure and stabilize tax revenue. Shin-ayoung, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, foreign investors net sold more than $1.7 billion worth of local stocks in March, becoming net sellers for the first time in 6 months. Data from the Bank of Korea shows that offshore investors unloaded a net $1.73 billion worth of domestic stocks last month. According to a bank official, this reflects foreign investors' risk aversion after the crises at Silicon Valley Bank and Credit Suisse. Foreign investment turned to a net outflow for the first time in 6 months in March after recording consecutive net purchases starting October last year until February. South Korean girl group Blackpink were back in Tokyo over the weekend for 2 concerts in the Japanese capital. The group's agency, YG Entertainment, said today that a total of 110,000 people were in attendance. As part of the group's Born Pink World Tour, the girls performed some of their big hits, including How You Like That, Kill This Love, and Shut Down. They also performed some of their solo songs, with all 4 members having released singles. The group hadn't performed in Tokyo since 2019, and so the demand for tickets was high. So much so that YG said the sales of the restricted view seats were sold out in no time. Blackpink are due back in Japan this June with 2 dates in Osaka. What is lost in Seoul Metro is found in Seoul Metro. Now, this is the norm here in the capital city, much to the relief of those who unwittingly leave behind their possessions on subway trains or at subway stations. Our Kim Jung-shil has this story.
This is a lost and found center for subway lines number 3 and 4 here in central Seoul. Some items get picked up quite quickly. Some have been here since last year. There's no name tag, no address, nothing to help find out who the owner is.
More than 500 to 600 items arrive every month here at Chungmuro Lost and Found Center. And some of the items here are quite unexpected, like this celadon, for example. Was found at a women's bathroom inside the station last October and is still waiting to be picked up.
It's not just the celadon that's unusual. We asked the manager about some of the more surprising items she's found.
We get shocked when we get mannequin heads. Sometimes there are even false teeth for senior citizens.
There are also guitars, violins, and fire extinguishers. If no one claims these items after 6 months, they then get taken to social work institutes to be used for people in need. Recently, there's been a surge in foreigners who visit this center.
Recently, a Japanese tourist came to look for his watch. We had that watch at the center. We asked him if he has any photos of the watch, and he did, so we returned it to him.
More than 2,400 thank you letters were sent to Seoul Metro last year by people who had found their lost valuables. An exchange student from the Netherlands said she knows someone who had a lucky escape.
My friend lost her phone in the subway, and someone brought it to the lost and found, so she got her phone again. I think it was really a good thing, because I think back home in the Netherlands, that would not happen. Someone would have taken the phone.
Lost and found centers in South Korea upload daily findings online on the day that they arrive. Anyone missing their belongings can visit lost112.go.kr and see if their belongings are there. The Lost and Found Center manager said it really helps if passengers can remember the subway car number they've been traveling on, which is written on the platform floor. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
Authorities are proposing the hammering out of smart buildings that better accommodate the productive use of robots. Jo Sung-min has more on this proposal.
While robots are already being used in many parts of the country to make life easier, many limitations still restrict their use. Most are either cleaning, carrying food to customers, or disinfecting as it wanders around. While these are all helpful features, experts in Korea believe they can do more. That's why the nation's land ministry has come up with the idea of smart buildings that are designed so that robots can be used to their fullest.
When a building becomes smart, the robots will bring a package from outside to right in front of the office or even into the room. It's an idea that makes things a lot more convenient.
The ministry also predicted that the technology would provide a setting where robots can disinfect areas and take care of elders.
When seniors need a wheelchair or rescue robots with handles and wheels, they aren't just for use at home. They need to use them outdoors too, and even in different buildings.
They also suggested how urban air mobility will be applied to the smart building project. Urban air mobility, also known as UAM, is a next-generation traffic system either for traveling or transporting freight. The ministry said once the smart buildings are complete, they will set up UAM stations for easier transfers and a faster response system against any potential accidents. Experts from some 50 public and private organizations have taken part in launching the committee and said they are still working on the exact outline to put the project in place, as autonomous driving and UAM are some of the technologies that still require time to be fully commercialized. Jo Sung-min, Arirang News.
For those across South Korea, an umbrella will be a must tomorrow. A rain system will enter the country, spreading nationwide showers. Therefore, expect conditions to be stuffy at times as temperatures will be relatively warm. Also, gusty winds will follow for most inland regions. Rainy spells and strong winds can create dangerous driving conditions, so please be extra careful out on the roads. Central regions will see rain for the morning and showers will gradually spread nationwide. As for the amount of rainfall, central regions will see 5 to 20 millimeters. The rest of the nation will see about 5 millimeters. Despite the rainfall, dry conditions will persist as the amount of rainfall won't be enough to alleviate the prolonged dryness. Tomorrow, Seoul and Daegu will be starting off at 12 degrees. Daytime highs won't be rising too much. Seoul will get up to 16 degrees. Gwangju 20, Gyeongju and Jeju Island will be reaching 23 degrees. And this coming Friday, the entire nation will see showers again. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all for tonight's newscast. Thank you for watching. Hope everyone has a great start of the week and a good night.
I'm live! 저를 도와주시는 분들이
저희와 함께 해줄 수 있는 세션분들
아무리 봐도 없지. 펜션 같은데 아니라고 아무도 안 하는 거고.